Welcome to 52 Weeks of Hope. This is where you get to hear how to feel happy, balanced, and worthwhile. How to make that lonely ache vanish and feel empowered, confident, and secure. I'm Lauren Abrams, and I get to help you feel that magic again since going through my own dark night of the soul by chatting with incredible leaders, healers, and change agents who give us their messages of hope after overcoming challenges of their own. And today we're talking to yoga trader, meditation teacher, and health and wellness executive Maya Magennis. Are you losing focus and feeling discouraged? You get to up your game and your life right now. Get ready for some real wellness tips and learn how to tap into your intuition, do what's right for you and your body, and finally put that white light of protection around you. You're going to love hearing today's chat with ex-investment banker turned accounting guru, now trainer and wellness executive extraordinaire. Welcome to 52 Weeks of Hope, Maya Magennis.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. And I've heard so much about you from a mutual friend that it's not often I meet somebody who grew up in Kauai, which is like paradise, and
Yes.
had these hippy dippy, as to how I've been told you call it, parents who, your mom does yoga, your dad plays guitar, and all you wanted to do was escape, which is just proof that the grass is always greener.
Yep.
And here you are, you applied to all East Coast colleges, went to Duke sight unseen. You're probably an accounting major or something because you became an investment banker. And yet, here it is. Fast forward, you're a meditation teacher. You now teach yoga teachers, and you're this in the whole wellness industry. Such an interesting evolution. So what opened you up to yoga and wellness and meditation? You're very open about the fact that you and your mom are so close.
Yeah, we really are. And, I think she was definitely like my initial entry point into a lot of these practices, but I was really resistant to it. Like you said, I grew up in this kind of hippy dippy, open, lovely environment. There was nothing wrong with it at all. It had everything that I needed, but yet it didn't feel like enough. I was always seeking more. I always wanted to live somewhere else, be somewhere where I felt like I had more opportunity. And my mom started practicing yoga when I was little, and I would see her practice, and it was at a time when yoga was not nearly what it is today, right? Not as kind of generally acceptable. People didn't really know what it was. And I would watch her practice and just be so embarrassed by what she was doing. I was just like, oh my gosh, Mom, why are you doing these weird things? Why are you breathing funny? What are you doing?
My daughter is embarrassed by everything I do. She'll be 22 next month, but she's a senior in college. But she's always was embarrassed by everything.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't matter what we're doing. I remember my mom doing yoga.
It really was funny though. And, my mom was really into transcendental meditation also. Okay. So I had to start meditating when I was about 11. I did it literally kicking and screaming, crying. I don't want to do this. Why are you making me sit still? I just don't want to participate in this weird activity.
My daughter is never allowed to hear this. Both my kids. My kids could never hear this. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
But really, it was the entry point. And, so many things, sometimes you come across something in your life and you're not really ready for it. So it takes a couple years or maybe even a lot of years to open yourself up to the lessons that you have to learn. And I think that was definitely yoga and meditation for me. It's, I got introduced when I was a young teenager. And then it was really when I arrived in college, and I had been a ballet dancer for most of my life. So I was really accustomed to using my body and I loved to move. But when I started dancing in college, it really wasn't doing it for me anymore. I realized I wasn't going to be a professional dancer, which had been a dream of mine for a long, long time. And so as I kind of transitioned out of dance, I needed something else to fill that same kind of need to move and be connected to my body and kind of work with my mind in a different way. And so when I started getting more interested in yoga again in my early 20s, I think my mom thought it was maybe a little bit of a temporary thing. Oh, she's finally, seeing that maybe this is a cool thing to do. But there was never any pressure from her. It was, I led the way 100%.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah. And then I realized when I was in college, which was obviously it was kind of a stressful environment. I was an economics major, did a lot of work with my brain. And I needed that peace of mind that I really found the more that I got into yoga and as I started meditating more regularly. And then when I transitioned into my first job out of college, which was in investment banking in New York City, yoga and meditation, they were my survival tools. It was the only thing that I had that really kept me grounded.
an econ major. It's like the dichotomy of like Kauai and, you know, like it's such a dichotomy.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
It's so different.
And I think I needed that a little bit, right?
Yeah,
like I am kind of that personality that was like, okay, I've seen the extreme on this one side. I really want the opposite. And then I had to go like all the way to the other side.
That is.
Yeah. But it was a great experience. And I told my parents when I was 6 years old that I was going to move to New York and live there. So, there was a part of me that just was really determined and I did it. And I was there for a while. I worked in finance for a little bit, around 5 years before I decided it wasn't for me. And that was a whole journey in its own right. So I think all these things show up for us for a reason, and we really have to work through them.
Yeah. Well, that's long enough to know if it's for you or not. 5 years is giving it a chance. Definitely.
Yeah.
So how did you end up with this as a profession? My understanding is from people I've spoken to, you kind of saved YogaWorks.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that. During COVID and everything, when everything went down, you're the one that kept it digital and makes yoga available online for everyone.
Yeah. And, yoga impacted me has been such a big part of kind of, I think what I'm here to do is really in sharing the practice and not so much the physical practice, because yoga is so much bigger than that. It's really just like getting people to be more present and to understand that like in existing in the present, we're so much less likely to get caught up in things that we can't control. So it's like such an important thing for me to spread that. And I started working at YogaWorks right out of my investment banking job, actually. I got a job there thinking that it was going to be my sabbatical from real life. I'm going to take this fun job. Yeah.
While you find yourself, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was like, I have some time. I'm going to do this for a year or so. I was applying to grad school at the time. And then I never went to grad school. I stayed at YogaWorks and moved up the ladder and ultimately moved out to Los Angeles with them. But I actually was teaching at that time. I started teaching. I never thought I wanted to be a teacher. Again, that's like some of the mom hangover that I had, which was, I don't want to do what my mom did, but I loved teaching and I felt so fulfilled. And it was really one of the only times that I had in my day where I could completely just drop into the present and not be so caught up in the email, the BlackBerry, all those things that were constantly like a barrage of stimulation coming from the outside. So teaching for me became like my happy place. And so I started teaching a lot more, even as I was working on the corporate side at YogaWorks. And ultimately, teaching really felt like my calling, especially as I started training other teachers and became a trainer for YogaWorks. And I did that for a couple of years. And it was really, I've been with YogaWorks for almost 11 years now, but in a lot of different capacities. So when I was teaching for them, the pandemic hit us. And that was a big shift, I think, for yoga teachers across the board, because, it went from being this very in-person thing and people running around from studio to studio, teaching classes, teaching private clients, and all of that basically ceased to exist like in a couple of days. Yeah. And so it was wild to just see the change in the industry. But I was fortunate enough to be connected to YogaWorks and connected to the executive team there that as they knew, okay, this is going to last a little bit longer than the initial 3 weeks that, LA County predicted it would last for, they brought me back on board on the corporate side because we knew that we had to make a change. We knew that we were going to have to pivot to be a more digital product so that we could, save the company and keep teachers working and keep students practicing, which is ultimately my mission anyway. So it was definitely not easy. I think we're still kind of riding the waves of all of that right now. But to me, it's a story of hope because YogaWorks has been around for so long. My teacher, Matya Zarati, was actually the founder of YogaWorks, and she's no longer with us. But I know her mission was always to get more people practicing yoga because she believed if more people practice, the world would be a better place. And I've taken that on, full on. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, it's the same with the meditation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been proven again and again. Just vibrationally. So
yeah. And to me, they're really synonymous. And this is like what I love about yoga and meditation together is, so much of our lives, we live kind of disconnected from our bodies. And there's no way that you can connect to the stillness within you unless you get more connected to your body. So it's such an organic transition, I think, going from, the physical practice and then really being able to reside within yourself and experience the energy of connection that comes from meditation.
Okay, so in everything you had said before, there were two things that really stood out to me the most.
Yeah.
One was doing what lights you up instead of like, I've studied to do this and I've always wanted to be in New York and everything. And instead, you followed what lights you up.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I just think that is so important. And there's so many people that they know what lights them up. They know what they want to do, but they're afraid to take that leap or just to stop doing the 9 to 5 drudgery or whatever it is. And what would you tell somebody like that?
I would say to continue to at least take a part of your day every day to focus on the things that light you up. Because I think, as we all know, and I'm a really practical person, which is kind of an interesting part of the dichotomy that you were talking about, in that, I know like for some people, especially people who are more practical, are more rooted in like what's happening day by day in like the logistics and the admin, it's not realistic to just pivot and, ditch your day job and do something that you consider more a passion project or like your dream overnight. So it's like, how do you carve out more time to focus on those things, even if it's not to make money or it's not like as your profession, but so that you can start to build upon those dreams, those passions, and really figure out how you might be able to incorporate them into your life more broadly. And I think it's so important to have those things that light you up, because sometimes I also think, our society has kind of almost gotten a little bit confused in that sometimes your job and your passion are two different things and they don't have to be the same thing.
Yeah.
But you definitely still have to have the passion in your life. Like you have to have that thing that lights you up, because those are the moments that ultimately, I think when you look back at it all, you're going to remember. And those are the things that, are going to sit in your body and your heart and your mind. And they're the things that keep you moving forward.
Yeah, it's so true. And the other thing you said that really stood out is, and you were using the term BlackBerry, which some people, the people that listen to this do remember what it is, but when you're in yoga and meditation that you don't have those. When I first started 52 Weeks of Hope, I was only interviewing a much older demographic and about what's the meaning of life? What have you gleaned from being here all these years? Like, tell me. It was my soul search. And the number one thing I was told is, you young people need to put down your phones and connect. And I just always remember that. And it's hard. It really is. I know that whenever I was driving my kids in the car, I would make sure I didn't have my phone, because that was my time, because I'm a working mom and I wanted to have that time. But also when I'm out, and I try to always put my phone away. If I don't go out that much because of COVID, but, and now that I'm starting to, I'm making a real concerted effort to, like when I just went hiking with a friend, phone away. I'm not going to be on my phone anyway.
I think it's so important. I mean, and I think it's very rare, especially because the expectation has become that we're all so connected, superficially. We're connected through these devices. The expectation is that we respond to things right away. I'm old enough that I remember a time when, sometimes if you had to call somebody's landline, you would have to leave a voicemail. And they maybe would call you back, but you never knew when. It was a very different time. But to me, what's been so interesting to watch, especially because like I've been in the culture of, being responsive and having to respond to emails within an hour. And that was very much the expectation of my professional life, but how disconnected we've all become. It's like we're so connected that we've gone the other way, and we've forgotten how to relate to each other in a really authentic and like human capacity. And we just expect to relate to each other with text and memes and reels on Instagram.
Yeah, I was told I had to make reels. So like, I don't know how to do that. I am not a big, like, oh no, please no.
Well, I think we've gone in the extreme, right? It's like, we're either really wanting to consume like these very short bits of content, or it's like, we're in it for like a 12 episode series on Netflix and we're going to binge it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, then there's somebody I really connected with and I thought she was so cool. And then she had overcome so much. I was like, oh my gosh, I want to interview you for my podcast. And I met her in a professional capacity, at work and everything. Yeah. And I brought her and I interviewed her and she became a professional. Like everything we were talking, I was like, who are you? I can't put her podcast on because nobody's going to listen to this. Like, wait, what happened to the person I've been talking to for the last couple of weeks? I was like, no, you have to be you. She's like, no, I can't let anyone know who I am authentically. I was like, oh, yeah, that's just so weird.
I mean, I think that's been a huge lesson, at least for me in my life, is, if you can't show up authentically and you're afraid that, that's going to scare people away or it's going to, make you perceived a certain way, like those other people aren't your people. They're not for you, right?
Could you imagine being like you are right now talking when you were in New York at your job? Right?
No, and that was always,
no. I wish you had seen your face right now. It's like, no. I mean, no. But see, I actually am like this pretty much. I mean, I'm listening to my clients when I'm a lawyer, but this is me all the time now. I've also been doing this a while, but I just don't care anymore. Like this is me in all of my settings.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is it. And there's a freedom in that though. Like
Absolutely.
There really is. So here you are, you've opened up. How did you end up like in the meditation realm? And now you're in the health and wellness, like in the whole full body nutrition and everything else. How did you end up there?
It's all connected. And, I think more and more I've realized how connected those things are, but really it came from me hitting rock bottom. I think I really embraced a lot of these practices, especially with like the nutrition side. I got really burnt out when I was working in investment banking. As that's a very typical story for people, especially who start their careers in finance. It's just a real kind of churn and burn industry. And I was working 100 hours a week and my body started to break down. And I didn't have the tools yet to really, or the wisdom, or feel like I had the authority to stand up for myself and my health and my well-being. So I left the industry. And for me, it was that process of recovering from my investment banking experience that got me really interested in how everything is connected. And I realized that, so much of our culture is really fixated on, quick fixes and taking pills or, doing things that make you feel better temporarily, but don't really solve for the underlying issues.
So did you go to therapy? Because I have interviewed some people who had really, really bad experiences and then they were given medication and everything, and then they had to get off of that. So did that happen to you too? Yes,
it happened to me too. And at the time, it was really interesting because you go and you talk to somebody that you think is really qualified to help. And I'm not discounting anybody's qualifications, but it was kind of like, well, you're showing symptoms of depression. So here's an antidepressant. And I knew just intuitively that there was more to it than that. We're not walking around depressed because we have, an antidepressant deficiency. That's not what this is coming from. It's that can be very helpful. And again, I'm not discounting, I think that modern medicine is miraculous in so many ways. But for me, I knew it was something more. And so I started to really invest in learning more about mind-body practices, yoga, meditation. I took it a level deeper. And then I also got really interested in how food ultimately affects how we feel in our bodies, because it has a huge impact. And I don't know that we necessarily learn that. And so much of what we do on a daily basis is driven by kind of like our consumerist culture. And all these things are thrown in our face as being, the best thing for health, or, this is how you are going to achieve X, Y, and Z. And really, it comes down to getting more in touch with what you as an individual need versus what everybody wants to tell you need. It's a process. It takes time. And it's like a willingness to explore and experiment. And I think for many of us, especially if you're, really overburdened and burnt out, which I think a lot of our society is, you feel like you don't have the time.
Yeah, it is a lot to learn. So what were the things that you had to give up, or what did you have to do?
So I ultimately ended up studying a realm of kind of nutrition and medicine called functional medicine, which really looks at root causes, diet, exercise, lifestyle factors, sleep, like a lot of these things that I think have become more buzzy recently. But this was 12 years ago. So at the time, there wasn't as much information out there. But ultimately, I cleaned up my diet big time, cutting out processed foods, cutting out a lot of the alcohol and, some of the things that I would do that I thought I needed to do to have fun. But really, they were just making me feel worse. And I started embracing, even in small doses, this idea that I needed to do things that fulfilled me on a daily basis to kind of counterbalance the things that were taking energy away. And my mom always used to tell me when I was little, and it only landed on me fairly recently, like what she was talking about, that in every situation, you need to weigh, does this give me energy or does it take it away? And it's balancing, making sure that you have enough stuff that you're doing for yourself every day that gives you energy so that you can counteract the things that maybe take it away or decrease it. And I really have taken that on as a life philosophy.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So are there foods that people listening, like what's the number one worst food?
Well, it's very individual, but I would say, some of the most common allergens, it just so turned out that I had celiac disease. So I have like a major gluten intolerance.
Okay.
So that's a big one for me personally.
I have a question about that. Like if you go to Europe though, I just wonder if it's as bad there. Okay.
So I have it because I have celiac is like a diagnosable condition, but there's also gluten intolerance that a lot of people have that's made worse by like some of the farming practices in the United States. Okay. So I know plenty of people that go to Europe who are totally gluten intolerant in America and are fine in the European countries.
That's what I was wondering about. Okay.
So I've seen people like, in the flesh who have that experience. And it's kind of shocking to me because we just, here in America, so much of it is, we've got like volume-based farming and like all these practices where they use a lot of chemicals and fertilizers and things like that ultimately interact with people's systems too. And that was another big thing that I learned is just, most of us are dealing with a pretty heavy toxic load on a daily basis, just in the environment, cleaning products, things that we wash our clothes with, that all those things interact with our endocrine system, with our bodies. And we have to take that into account. So it's things like, even cleaning up, your cleaning cabinet, the kind of products that you're using and cleaning up the kind of food that you're eating, because all of it does have a really measurable impact on how you feel.
Yeah. I know white sugar is like, I remember seeing
sugar
that
is
years ago.
Yeah.
That was,
Oof.
I know.
And they're learning more and more about it. And it's so fascinating. That could be, I'm sure there's, plenty of podcasts out in the interwebs about those types of things, but it is, it's sugar, it's dairy, it's gluten, it's, a lot of these things that are fairly common allergies. But if you do choose to consume them or you feel like, oh, I can't live without that, understanding the consequences of like how it may make you feel and being okay with that.
Yeah, I know. So, and then I just learned about the moon cycles and our energy and how it fluctuates depending on where the moon is at.
Sure.
And that was last month in a podcast. And I just found that fascinating. You're like, yeah, sure. But I just learned it. And I'm like, okay, how did I go all these years not knowing this? That 9 to 5 is male construct. I mean, which that makes sense, but because we all know our female energy is completely different. But what I was wondering with that is, okay, so now that I know that, it's a full moon, I'm going to be full of energy. How do I not make that a self-fulfilling prophecy? It's a new moon, I'm going to be a slug. Don't put anything on my calendar. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, I have kind of where I'd say like, it's more of a passion of mine than anything. I don't claim to be an expert, but I do love astrology and I've been studying it for several years. And my mom's really into astrology also, and has been having my astrological chart done since I was a little kid. But all of these things, I had the same questions. Again, like as a practical person, I was like, this seems like witchery. I don't really know. It doesn't seem like
that. It's such an old practice. I mean, the female Ayurvedic part was so interesting to me.
Yep.
I mean, I know about Ayurveda. I know all that. I had never heard about the female Ayurveda, which is before Egypt and Greek. Like, it's so old. And it was all fascinating. I just want to know how I don't make this a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Sure. And I think it's such an important thing. It's like anything else, right? It's like if you go into it with a certain understanding or a knowledge base, it doesn't necessarily have to inform your mood or how you feel about it. It's just an additional piece of information. And I think sometimes what that additional piece of information helps us do is adopt a greater sense of compassion for ourselves in that moment. So it's not so much that, it's a new moon, I'm going to have no energy. It's like, it's a new moon. If I feel like I have lower energy, it's not like that something's wrong with me, something that I can work with. And I think the more that we have those pieces of information that just help us understand what's happening moment by moment, like those are the things that really help us to inform our choices. And it may be that instead of clearing your calendar, you take 5 minutes and take a meditation break, and all of us have the ability to clear calendars. I totally get that. But it's giving yourself a little bit more space in your life, depending on what's going on around you.
Yeah. And I also think we use the information like, be aware when the new moon is, and maybe you don't want to book up your calendar around those days. It's an awareness. I've discussed this so much with my friends.
Awareness is key though. I mean, ultimately that's to me is like what all these practices are meant for. It's meant to help you build your awareness muscles so that, you can become a little bit more in tune with what's going on around you and how you really feel. Like most of us, that's kind of like dark territory some days, right?
Yeah,
How do I really feel today? I don't really want to know.
You Google feelings list and you look at this list and you go, I think it's that one. If we're quiet and close our eyes and be like, what are the choices? I'm not kidding, by the way.
No doubt. And I do
need a list.
We need a list. And it's also, I think from that list, they're also like, we need to learn like a greater sense of acceptance.
Yeah.
It's like so often we pinpoint or identify something as like, oh, it's this. And then the next thing that we do is judge it.
Oh, no.
Right? Like we're not able to sit with it. We're like, oh, I'm going to judge this.
And it could be a gradation of any of them too.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think men have as many choices. I was told that women have like 134 feelings, men have 8. So when you try to explain that's why they don't get it. I was told that.
And it's kind of funny. It's like I had the opportunity a couple of years ago. I taught a yoga teacher training in Norway, which was really fun. But what I realized, because I was teaching in English, and while many Norwegians do speak English, their native language is not, it's Norse. So they were explaining to me though, like the number of words that they have for snow, they have like infinite terms for the word snow. And because that's such a part of their life, and there's all these like different gradations and qualities of snow and all these things. But then there were certain things that in English, like were very, what I thought to be simple topics. And I would try to explain it to them, and there was just like no understanding whatsoever. And you realize though, like we all have these like in our own internal languages. Like we focus on some things like, there's like a million different kinds of love. There's like a million different kinds of hope, but yet in our language, we just say love or hope.
Yeah. It's context based.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of where it's at. Do you have spiritual practices that you do on a daily basis?
I do. Yeah. So, and for me, a lot of it is rooted in my meditation practice, which has really been a constant for me. And a lot of that is just learning how to turn my attention inside and connect with myself. And I really believe that we're all connected in a much greater way. And, whether you want to call that the universe or God or spirit or whatever it is, I think we all have our own terms. It's recognizing that like underneath all the wavering, and I'll say it, the suffering, because we as humans suffer, there is like a real connection, and the universe really conspires for us. And I think that's really easy to forget because things can feel hard in the moment. But I think more often than not, when I look back in hindsight, I'm really grateful for the way things turned out, even though it was really difficult in the moment.
Yeah. The best lessons are always, for me, have always come from my most difficult times.
Yep.
That's where my growth always is, but it sucks going through it.
Well, and that's, to me, that's like the beauty of the meditation practice. It's like